Hello, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Housing Committee. My name is Councillor Julian Tuke and I'm chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel. If you ask a question at the meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcasting and/or training purposes. Please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. Okay, first item is apologies, and I can see Councillor Williams arriving now, which is fantastic. That reduces our apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Flo Klukas, Councillor Jan Foster, and from Agnieszka Wisniewska. Councillor Cathal Lynch is acting as a substitute. Thank you, Cathal. That's really helpful. I'd also like to give a really big welcome to Elizabeth Maudsley to the committee. Thank you for stepping out. Really appreciated. Okay, declarations of interest, item 2. Has anyone got any interest to declare? Next item then is 3 public and member questions. 1 public question was received and the response was published this morning. The question was from Gary Clark, who is not present to ask a supplementary question, so no supplementaries on that. Okay, next item, we need to have a show of hands for this. So I move, it's the appointment of our new leasehold representative. So I move that members appoint Elizabeth Maudsley as leasehold representative of the committee. Could we have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Elizabeth, are you happy to be called Lizzie? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item is minutes of the last meeting. So the minutes of the 16th of July meeting have been circulated with the agenda. I'm not aware of any amendments. I move that members approve the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of July 2025. Could we have a show of hands, please? Those who were here. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, next item is our CEO briefing, but today the CEO is away, so very kindly Claire Hughes, who's Director of Governance, Housing and Committees, is going to present to the committee. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of updates for the committee this evening. So I'll start with an update on where we are with recruitment. So, you know, we've been looking at recruiting to some of key positions within the organisation. I'm really pleased to be able to inform you that we've made 5 appointments since this committee last met. So the first of those is to our resource planning team leader post. So that's the post that oversees the team that kind of allocate all of the repairs jobs and that kind of thing. So make those appointments with customers. And that was appointed to through a successful internal recruitment process. And we welcome Aston Stevens into that role, which is fantastic news. Secondly, we've appointed to the operations manager for responsive repairs. So this is the person that has overall responsibility for our repairs and voids service. And we went through a rigorous external recruitment process. But I'm pleased to report that actually the appointment was an internal one and John Clements has been successful in obtaining that role. We've also successfully appointed externally to the operations manager for technical investment. So that's overseeing our planned maintenance and programme maintenance. And that person will be joining us in about mid-November. And we've recruited externally to the head of regulatory compliance, so the person with overall responsibility for our compliance position. Again, that's an external appointment, and they're hopefully starting with us on the 20th of October. So quite a quick one for that. And finally, we've now also appointed a new project manager for the Housing Improvement Programme, who you'll get to meet at your next meeting. And again, that was an internal appointment to Kerry-Ann Pitter. So Kerry-Ann was with us covering another role on maternity leave, and we're really fortunate to have been able to keep her within the organisation. So these are really significant appointments in terms of bringing some structure and some balance back into the housing service following a period of quite significant change. So we look forward to welcoming the new people and obviously supporting those that have successfully achieved internal promotions in their new roles. And I'm sure you'll get to meet them all as a committee over the coming months. So secondly, I just wanted to update you on where we are with our self-assessment against the consumer standards. So I'm pleased to say that that self-assessment has now been completed, and we have submitted it to the Housing Quality Network, who will be conducting an independent review of our self-assessment to give us the assurance that we're on the kind of right track with the actions that we think we need to take to ensure that we are fully compliant with all of those consumer standards. So that review work will be carried out through October, and it will inform the further development of our Housing Improvement Action Plan, which will be coming to this committee for you to review again at your next meeting in November, and will be then shared with tenants and leaseholders as well. So that's that bit. Thirdly, just to let you know that in the next couple of days, we will be publishing our annual report to tenants. So that's the 24-25 report. So looking back over the last year, that will be published online. We will have some printed copies available at our sites as well. And what we have done for the first time is at the back, there's a page which sets out in the three most popular, the most spoken languages after English, how you can obtain a copy in a different language should it be required. And then we will be able to provide a translated version. And then finally, Chair, I just wanted to give the committee a quick update on where we are with the position on voids. So latest position as of today is that voids are down a further 14% since July. And we now have around 118 standard relet voids. 15 of those are actually with the lettings team, so 103 which are still going through the process of needing work, or work is ongoing in them. Just important, obviously, when we're talking about voids, just to remind the committee that we're not dealing with a static number, so it's quite hard to say, you know, it's down this much, it's up this much. Because on average, we receive about 20 new voids per month at the moment. And since April this year, we've had an additional 118 properties come through as new voids. So it's always worth bearing that in mind when we're talking about the void numbers. Predominantly, we split them into two. So we have minor voids and major voids. Minor voids are now very much the focus of our in-house voids team. And they're working really hard to bring those numbers down and returning them around at about a rate of 8 to 10 properties per week. And with regards to major voids, we now have 3 active contractors appointed, and they are working on 28 voids at the moment between them. So that's major voids. So that's things that need like a kitchen or a bathroom or replastering, that kind of stuff. And they're averaging around about an 8-week turnaround for major voids. So that's where we are with voids. If anyone's got any specific questions on voids, Matt Ward is here and can answer anything more detailed, but that's a high-level summary, and that's my update. Thank you, Chair.
Many thanks, Claire. Any questions from anyone? None at all. Just a reminder that no decision is required, but the committee can make recommendations if needed, and we could invite further scrutiny from ONS or the Cabinet if we so wished. But from the silence, I'm taking it that it's all good and understood. Just to be clear, voids, because I'm conscious that you're new, that means empty properties when people have left. Yeah. Please do, if any jargon comes up, please interrupt and say you're talking gobbledygook. Stop it. Good. Okay. Thank you. So the next item is the proposed performance framework and performance data for August 2025. Just a reminder of the objective on that. The objective of this is to provide the committee with key performance information in relation to voids, arrears, day-to-day repairs, antisocial behaviour and property compliance. Once again, I'd like to invite Claire Hughes. Claire, Director of Governance, Housing and Communities, to present to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, members, because I think you're going to be hearing my voice a lot this evening. So just to take you through very quickly through the performance report and the proposed framework. So the first part of this report sets out what we propose to be the sort of performance framework moving forward. And I'd just like to put on record my huge thanks to Victoria Bishop, who is with us, if anyone's got any questions, who's done a lot of the work on pulling this together and preparing what this framework might look like as we move forward. So that's what the first part of the report talks about, how we're going to report on a monthly, things will report on a monthly basis using key performance indicators, how we use the our compliance monitoring group. So that's a group generally of officers, but is also attended by the chair that looks at compliance, and how we do exceptions reporting as well. So that's the first part of the report. And then I just wanted to draw members' attention to a few things specifically around compliance, the compliance part of the report. So this is part 3 of the report, page 16 of your agenda pack. So just to highlight, at 3.1.4, we talked about some new high-risk actions. Just to update members that 3 of those have now been completed. And there is just one outstanding, which will be added to the compartmentation contract, which hopefully you've read is due to start in mid-October. And on the next bullet point, where it talked about 7 medium risks, 5 of those have now been completed. The 2 outstanding ones are quite complicated. One of them in particular relates to a lift shaft, for example, but we are actively working on solutions with experts for those 2. So if we look down then to 3.1.5 and we talk about those legacy risk actions, and for particularly for the benefit of Lizzie, we talk about new fire risk actions and legacy fire actions, and the reason for that is the legacy ones are the ones that have been in existence for quite some time and are still recorded in our old method of recording things. The new ones are now done in a system which is more automated, so we can just run a report and it tells us straight away, but the legacy ones are still tracked via a spreadsheet, so that's why we have the separation. So the legacy ones are now, they were 49 when this report was written, they're now down to 42, so again, still making some progress on that. And if we turn over to page 17, and if I just pick the doors, for example, there were 22 actions around doors. That's 7 of those are complete. We're now down to 15 on that. So on at the chair's request, actually, what we did do this time is we put in a new appendix, which is Appendix 5, which is a bit more of a detailed breakdown of the risk actions. It's page 30 of your agenda packs and 31. What we've done is we've broken the actions, the legacy ones, down by sort of block. So you can see where those are, what's happening, and where mitigations have been in place. So for the benefit of the committee, I can now tell you that action 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, action 10, for example, they have all been completed, as is action 22 and action 24. So this is updating all the time, but obviously we can only produce what's available at the time of writing the report, hence why the verbal update, action 29 is completed as well. So that's the compliance. The other thing that members will note is this is the first time you're seeing this in the new format, the new scorecard format. So if you look at page 26 and 27, you can see this is the new scorecard that we're now using. So it's a quick, how you can see really quickly whether we're compliant, where we're non-compliant. And then on the page 28, you'll see the actions, so where we've got things to follow up. and all of the narrative is in the cover report. You're also seeing for the first time Appendix 6, which is page 32 onwards. So this is the new, so these are the KPIs we've been working on in terms of things like antisocial behaviour, customer services, housing options, all of those kind of things. So this is the first time we've done this. We would like to move this to look more like the scorecard that you're going to get used to seeing. But this is the first iteration under this new performance framework. If anyone's got any questions about the framework or anything, I'm sure Victoria will help me out in answering them. Anything on the sort of technical stuff, I'm sure between the officers present, we can answer any questions. I'll leave it at that, I think, Chair, but as I said, happy to take any questions that any member may have.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, I have been working with you in the compliance team, and a lot of work has been done to make sure that the data collection is better, that it's consistent, so you can make apples and apples comparisons between buildings, that it's regular, and that it all goes into the same system. And that has been a massive task, and real progress has happened on that. So the fact that we've got better reports, which we need as a committee, is because we've got better data and better processes for gathering data and really understanding what's going on. So thank you for that. That's brilliant. I've got a very specific question. Fire doors. 19th of September, some fire doors were due to be fitted. Were they fitted? So that's putting you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
It's,
Yes, they were.
brilliant. Good. Excellent. So that's... Absolutely.
So in terms of the data that's collected, you meaning in terms of fire safety, etc.,
Sorry.
I presume? The data that you're talking about being collected, that's in terms of the fire compliance that's going around. So just one observation from my own experience was that on some of the collection of data, it was only supposed to go to tenant properties, not leaseholder properties, but they hadn't been made aware of the leaseholder properties in the building. So they came to mine, went inside, looked at my boiler, my carbon monoxide alarm, measured all around my door, none of which actually was within their remit. And again, when I highlighted at the end, I was like, I'm a little bit surprised you're coming in, considering I'm a leaseholder. And she's like, oh, well, I shouldn't have done this, but your doors aren't compliant. Great, well, now I have to pay out for a door, or, you know, that should have been made aware. So there is still some issue there. And again, it's that blind spot around leaseholders, which I think is a persistent theme. So.
I think that's a very fair point, and thank you for it's duly noted.
Yeah.
And Claire will take actions, won't we?
Yeah, we will.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking out. Any other questions, Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. The page 13, when you're talking about the this 4-week cycle of performance monitoring and review. So I'm understanding that the data analysis is being done by the compliance team. And I understand that the review at appropriate meetings is going to the managers. There's this thing saying quality assurance. Who's actually doing that? Because it's from reading the text, not really clear to me who's actually doing that. The other two are more specific. I like the little wiggly lines on the report. It makes me remember being in the labs at university. You've talked about void numbers, and I understand they're now coming down. This is under, I think, your exceptions. Housing revenues, the level of arrears going up. So I seem to remember we were speaking to Matt at the last meeting and saying we were doing quite well on this. And now I look at the KPI report to find that the arrears are going up. And you may remember a few months ago, I mentioned that a lot of tenants of my acquaintance, and some of whom have come to me for help, have been forced to migrate to universal credit from the legacy benefits. And despite having done absolutely everything right, they find themselves in arrears for no fault of their own. And just to say that I have now been sucked into the tentacles of the universal credit, and having been Cheltenham Borough Council tenant for 14 years and never once being in arrears, I now have a lovely piece of paper informing me that I'm £13 in arrears. So I'm just wanting to raise that again and just say this is a problem for a lot of tenants. And even though sometimes they're relatively low amounts, if it's everybody, then, you know, we're going to take a bit of a hit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Victoria can answer the first one.
Victoria, would you like to go?
Yeah, so I can cover the first question. So it's a really good question, actually, in regards to quality assurance. And I didn't necessarily include it in here because at the time the post hadn't been appointed. So as Claire mentioned earlier, the post regarding compliance, so that forgive me, I've forgotten the exact title, Claire, but that post that you mentioned earlier, it would be that post and myself that would be quality assuring it. So the data analysis would be completed and provided by the compliance team and also by data analysts that I line manage. And then we would be quality assuring that essentially as managers, and then it would go to the appropriate meetings for that scrutiny.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I can just add in with regards to the overall arrears position. We are actually ahead of target and arrears are lower than they were at the same point last year. There's work to do with regards to the report because we've just got to put the correct targets in there. This is a kind of list of the report, the performance that we want to be showing to yourself. So next time you do see this, you'll have the proper tracking. But as at the last committee, we are ahead of target.
Glenn.
Yeah, just wondering, as regards to the spike in homeless applications made in the last month, is there any indication from those applications what might be driving that at this particular time?
No, so haven't explored that. So the idea of the exceptions would be essentially identifying those issues, and then we need to essentially go to the managers that would be responsible for that information to explore it. Ideally, that would have happened prior to this, but this is the first time we've sort of done that cycle, and because we've not automated the data collection process and the reporting process, unfortunately, we haven't streamlined it as much. But one thing that I will do is ahead of the next meeting, will ensure that we can get that answer to you and from the appropriate manager regarding those applications. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I think
We've got
next.
some recommendations this time.
So,
I want you to approve the framework.
oh, sorry, yeah. So can we approve the recommended performance framework process? So the new process that we've got here, did the layout and everything make sense? And can we stick with that process? I think it's better personally, but I don't want to influence you.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. So show of hands, can we have on that? Thank you. Okay. Next item is item 8, which is the housing complaints and compliments report for Q1. The objective here is to provide an overview of housing-related complaints and compliments, identifying key areas of dissatisfaction and areas for learning and service improvement. I'd like to invite Olivia Underhill, who's Customer Services Manager, to present to the committee.
Thank you and good evening. You've all had the Q1 Complaints and Compliments report, and I just wanted to add, before I take any questions, that nationally complaint numbers do seem to be up, which I think could be seen as a positive thing, and that people are actually accessing complaints more. They know how to do it. They know how to make a complaint. We've since completed the self-assessment, which is an annual form that we have to complete. We were green on all areas, and it's been submitted to the Housing Ombudsman, and it's also been uploaded to our website. And we've also got additional resource within the complaints team now. So that is helping our complaints officer respond to all the complaints that are coming in for building services. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I just had one observation. The learning framework applied chart, I really struggled with the data visualization, because normally for me, time is in your horizontal axis. So the key thing I was trying to work out is are the figures going up or are they staying stable? And I was slightly struggling with that. That might be I don't know if anyone else had that experience with it on page 48.
I'd be very happy to take that away and see if I can present it in a more readable format, if that would work, and come back to the next committee with it. I think it's fluctuating. I think some areas are better. I think some areas probably aren't. And it's something that we're aware which areas that we need to work on, and that's something that we're doing internally.
Just the ask is obviously from a committee point of view, we want to be part of an improvement journey with you and understanding time series data. So data over time is really key to that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you very much for this. One thing stood out to me, which if you look at page 43, talking about complaints about the quality of work, partly due to the absence of routine post-inspections on both internal and external work, which affects the ability to ensure and maintain service standards. And also on page 42, some contractor work has not been monitored. This is something I've raised before and have seen this with a number of tenants. One particular case up in Wadden recently, where a security gate was insecure, and these people had drug dealers and drug users going into their back garden, and the contractors were repeatedly coming out, but it was never being fixed. And I'm aware that we've had a lot of turnover in building services and whatever. I just want to ask, is the lack of routine post-inspections of work carried out by contractors, is that because we are very short-handed and we don't have the people, or is it because that isn't set up in the framework? And I'm just thinking that it would be, if we're talking about an improvement journey, when we have had situations where contractors have come out 9 or 10 times and still it hasn't been fixed, it just strikes me that we just need to get a little bit tighter on our monitoring, because that is good for us as a service, because we are ending up maybe not looking great and our reputation is taking a knock when it's actually not our people doing this.
Claire?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. That's a really good point. So I think it's fair to say that contract management has been somewhat lacking. And I would say it's a mixture of resource and a mixture of skill. So managing contractors is a particular skill set. So we are looking at resource gaps at the moment and skill gaps around that. But I think also it's fair to say that we have done a lot of work over the last few months around how we procure our contractors and making sure that they are procured through really robust processes. And I'll use voids as a good example. So we've got 3 new contractors on voids at the moment, major voids. And how can I describe it? We're almost putting them through a bit of a beauty contest, I guess. So rather than going, here's 20 jobs each, we've given them a few jobs each, and then we monitor them, we see how they perform, and then we go, great, contractor A is definitely performing better, they can have 10 more jobs. Contractor B is not performing for us, so we have to do some proper contract management there, whether that be, just some discussions that need to be had, a resetting of the performance indicators, or whether it means that actually we need to move towards a position where we no longer use that contractor. That's the way that we are working now. So hopefully, as a result of all that work, we will start to see those complaints come down in that area of the business. But it's been a lot of work and we haven't fixed it all yet.
As a leaseholder, I obviously, and the wider leaseholders, we are subject to the same issues. In my property alone, we've had 8 issues with our building door this year. It's a bit of a different scenario as well, because if we have people coming out and we're charged for each call out with it not getting repaired. And then there's a negative impact for us in terms of service charge. So again, I understand what you're saying in terms of procurement and also competency of some of these people. Well, yes, but there's a negative impact for people having to pay for this service, for people who aren't really fit for purpose for that role. And just on that point you've noted there in terms of those 3 and having a beauty parade, I'd be interested to understand what the probation period is for most of these contractors and how that works. Is it a 0-hour contract? Does the work get monitored? And how does that directly feed in then in terms of the quality we're seeing?
Do you want Olivia?
No, I'm just contemplating whether I'm looking at Matt, because I don't know whether he might be a better place to answer than me. But I think the contracts that we have are, so they're not, it depends, because different contracts are different. But they don't necessarily have like a fixed, we will give you X number of jobs. It might be, if you do a job for us, this is the rate that we've agreed, but it doesn't commit us to necessarily giving them things. And also what we've started to include, which was lacking previously, is a performance framework within each contract so that we can actually assess contractor performance and then deal with that appropriately should they not be performing. So that's where we are with it.
I think that's really useful to understand. But again, it would be nice and something that I'd be interested to feedback to the leaseholder tenant around where we are having these unsuccessful repairs. Are we actually liable for them? Do we need to pay for each call out when it is persistently unsuccessful? And perhaps there could be a bit more of a framework around that that could allow us then to sort of make sure that we're getting value for money as well.
Yeah, I think what would probably be good, Lizzie, is if I can put you in touch with Matt to have, because Matt, the leaseholder team sits within Matt's area, and if you could pick up an offline conversation about that, I think that would be really useful.
But actually, I would support Lizzie in this.
Yes, absolutely.
2 points, really. We shouldn't pay for shoddy workmanship. No one should, leaseholders or indeed the council. Secondly, I think we owe a debt to the people who make complaints, actually, because when they're making complaints, this isn't just about understanding tenant satisfaction. It's actually their complaints allow us to understand how well our contractors are working. So I guess a learning from this would be when those complaints come through and they are about poor workmanship from contractors, do we bring those complaints together to get an understanding of how that contractor is performing? Sorry, Olivia, I can see you're dying to jump in.
Just to let you know that we've already had one contractor meeting, or we've had one meeting with 2 contractors. about their complaints and how we can improve them. And we've got another meeting booked in for next week.
Thank you. Ian?
Yeah, I'd just like to come back briefly on that as well, because what you're saying about leaseholders, it's exactly the same situation with tenants, where tenants are saying this needs repaired, this needs to be repaired. We're not safe in our own homes. People are getting in through the security doors or whatever, and repeatedly, it's not just the quality of workmanship; it's the fact that no work appears to actually be done at all. They come out, they sit in their van, and they go, and nothing has actually been done. And yeah, that then says to tenants, we're not bothered about you. And it makes it less likely that people are going to engage with us, engage with the service, and as Lizzie is saying, ensure that the service is being good. And of course, I have a nasty suspicion that these repeated call-outs are being charged to the housing service, even though no work appears to have actually been done.
I wholly support you in your concern, and I'm sure Claire is hearing you loudly and clearly, and we will come back to this and we'll act on it. Thank you. So that was the housing complaints and compliments report. Any more, Glenn?
Yeah, just seeking clarification on the chart on page 40, where it says, for example, April, complaints open 24, complaints responded to 26. Does that mean that includes something that's happened from the month before, presumably?
Sorry, yes, it is. So it's always a moving figure. So we always have some in, and because we've got a 10-day response time, if they come in at the end of the month, they'll be captured the following month. So the figures very, very rarely add up.
Glenn, are you happy with that response? Yeah.
Well, it was the response I was expecting, to be honest.
Any other comments on this item? Okay, so we move on to the next item, which is the housing risk register. The objective here is to review the strategic risks relating to housing from the council's risk register. I'd like to invite Claire again, Claire Hughes, to present to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Strategic Housing Risk Register and captures strategic risks in relation to housing up until the 1st of September. And members of the committee are asked to note the report. I'll just draw out two risks. So CH1 around the housing revenue account. So that risk has raised since you last reviewed the risk register to reflect the end of year position as was reported to you. I think it was at your last meeting when Gemma came along to do the finance update, and also one that's gone down, a risk that's reduced, is CH3, which is around the stock condition data. And that risk has reduced to reflect the fact that we are now well over 70% done on stock condition surveys. The ones that now are outstanding are largely no access. So we're going through a process of talking to One Legal at the moment about what we do with the no access cases. And we do now have somebody whose role it is to actively use the data from the stock condition surveys to build out that planned maintenance programme that I've been talking about for a while. But that is actually now happening, probably not quite as we speak, but it has started in earnest. So just wanted to draw those two to members' attention, really, but I'm happy to take questions on any other risks.
Lizzie.
I've got another question. So we have touched in the leaseholder forum on the stock condition survey and then the planned maintenance for each property. The main reason for that being that as a group of leaseholders, there is obviously always that reservation around when fees are going to fall. And we've had a lot of large works across the sort of properties by and large over the recent period, roofs, sort of outside repairs. And this is all great for tenants, of course, but there are obviously financial concerns for leaseholders. So appreciate this might not be the relevant point of the agenda, but it's just making sure that there's that visibility in terms of the stock condition survey, that can come through to leaseholders and they can then have that sort of forecasting in terms of maintenance, because that is a persistent theme that we're encountering, people who have that sort of financial vulnerability that they're not going to be able to afford the upcoming works.
Yes. So as the planned maintenance programme is developed, just to give a bit of assurance around that, we will be obviously going out to consult on it. So we'll be consulting with tenants and with leaseholders on it. So you'll see it as it's starting to develop.
Anyone else, Claire?
Yeah, it's not a risk on this chart, but it's one I've noticed very recently, looking through the Planning and Trees Weekly, which popped up. There's an increasing trend of amalgamations going on in Cheltenham. There's one in Park Ward just cropping up this week, actually, where 3 flats are being converted into one property. That's potentially a good few people who suddenly need to find somewhere to live in Cheltenham. Is there anything we can do well, this is probably a planning issue more than anything. Is there anything we can do within the local plan to have some kind of presumption against that kind of thing?
So you're talking about private property?
I suspect it is, yeah.
Because Glenn, I would say that if it's private property, it's not really in the remit of this committee. This is purely, our stock as such, stock that we own as such, or own the leases on it. I hear you, but it's not the remit of this committee.
I'm merely pointing it out because it may well be increasing our housing waiting list, this kind of thing going on.
I do hear you, but also I'm not sure we have a clear policy on this, a political policy on this. And again, this committee isn't really about setting political policies about such issues. Rowena.
Sorry, I did press it, but sorry. But actually, if a private landlord owns a flat or currently a house that they wish to turn, there is nothing in the planning regulations that means that can stop that. And even if you were to try and introduce something like that as a local plan, I don't think we'd stand very much chance in a court of law, because it's that person's property to do with as they will. The simple answer, it's quite interesting because I was in a housing debate. The simple answer is we're not building enough houses. So let's just build some more houses so that, our housing list doesn't increase.
I mean, we are stepping into policy areas as well. And as I say, we are a Liberal Democrat council, but this isn't Liberal Democrat policy as such. And I think we would have to agree that separately. But I hear you, and I hear your frustration.
I'm only mentioning it because I believe, it may be out of date, but I think there is, Richmond Council are looking at it at the moment. But I may be wrong on that, but the latest I've heard is that they may be thinking of it, yeah.
Again, I must stress it's not really the remit of this committee. However, I'm sure Rowena can talk to the planning people, and if there is something to look at there, it can be looked at. Rowena, would you like to add to that?
I will. I'll pick it up, Glenn, and we can have a conversation, as I say, offline from here. But I'm happy to have a chat with you. It might be the relevant cabinet member that is, I make the link to.
Any other questions? Okay, the next item then, which is the updates from the tenant and leaseholder panels. So again, the objective is to highlight the ongoing activities of the tenant and leaseholder panels and provide an additional opportunity for tenant and leaseholder voices to be heard, because you are the eyes and ears, as such, you're close to the ground and you understand what's going on. Agnieszka Wisniewska, who's our tenant representative, has sent her apologies, but she has provided an update. Have you all had a chance to look at the update? Would you like me to read the update out? No? Okay, then I will pass it on to Lizzie Maudsley, who's our leaseholder representative, if you'd like to provide any information to the committee. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with exactly how much background you've received of late in terms of what the leaseholder committee have been picking up. So I'll give an overview just from my sort of experience to date, which has been over the course of the last year or so. So a couple of these I have sort of touched on, but there's sort of overall three key themes that are constantly being repeated. So the first being a focus on repairs and maintenance, which we have, which I have raised. So just concerns again from the leaseholders themselves about response times and also communications that are received, confusion between tenants and leaseholder properties, and also when people are going to come around. A lack of sort of availability and an expectation we must be present for those visits, with very little actual ability to negotiate alternative times. Again, contractor accountability and performance review is something we've discussed as well. And that's more in terms of the sort of ad hoc repairs. Service charges, as you might expect, come up quite frequently, particularly at the moment where cost of living is obviously an issue for many people. So just making sure that we've got that transparency around costs and how fees are actually arrived at. There's often a sort of concern in terms of some of the Section 20 notices for the large repairs, particularly, that, again, there's a perception that costs are being unfairly pushed towards leaseholders, which I know is not the case, but in terms of the actual fees that we see, they often do seem incredibly unreasonable in terms of the actual quality or scope of work that's being picked up. So again, just a common theme that comes up. The request for accessible breakdowns of how fees are derived is something that we've been mentioning as well. Several of us particularly have been in contact and wider leaseholders that we're aware of in respect of things such as cyclical decorating. Again, I think that's always a bit of a difficult one for leaseholders to understand how some of these fees are arrived at, particularly in terms of sort of safety monitoring, which then does significantly increase the cost. And plain English summaries being available on request, again, you know, the Section 20 notices in themselves are not overly accessible in the form of language that comes across. And so just making sure that it's written in such a way that the wide leaseholder network can understand those would be of benefit for the group. Again, still sort of keeping in theme with Section 20 notices, that feeds into sort of this concern I've already raised around major works. So having that earlier engagement and understanding the timelines off the back of the planned maintenance would be really useful. People do have like just a general, you know, sort of perception, will I be able to stay here? And there's one gentleman who lives in my own property who does not engage in any way with the council or with the leaseholder group, but I speak to him and I know for a fact that he's still working in like his late 70s and he's constantly feeling a threat for the upcoming fees, and he's lived there and purchased his property sort of 30 years ago. So it is a concern for lots of people. The final point, which it kind of weaves into it all, is communication. Again, all communication is tenant focused, and this is a constant sort of point that we've raised, and it can be incredibly inconsistent with how we are receiving that. The format, is that text? Is it post? Again, just making sure that that is in an accessible format, and that is an area that we're focusing on, that we're going to try and do a review on within the leaseholder panel. So you might be hearing more about that one in the future. Thank you. Any questions?
Can I just say, first of all, thank you, because you've really hit the ground running. And truly, this committee is about making everyone who's involved with the properties accountable, and also about having clarity, you know, real clarity. And you've hit the ground running, and you've given us a good list of stuff, so thank you. Now, who would like to address some of those points? So look, I'll go for the plain English thing. So that has come up quite a lot, hasn't it? Yeah. And we absolutely know that we must get better. So could I ask a favour? Could you just do a photo of an example of bad English or something, so we've got something really solid?
Yeah, and it's not so much about bad English, but it's just sort of, yeah, understanding what it is. It's like just a long list, just like a shopping list of things. And I understand now that a lot of that is to do with the scope that the Section 20 has to cover. If it's not listed on there, they can't charge us if you haven't got the letter. So it does come across as a very unwieldy list. And that in itself spikes concern, because you see 50 different, well, it's not 50, it's an exaggeration, but you know, a long list of things they're going to look at, and you think, oh dear gosh, how can I possibly ever hope to afford this? So again, perhaps it might just be that earlier signposting in the letter and just making it, you know, clearer about how that sort of...
It sounds like on 20 there's a balancing act between explaining what we need to do from a statutory point of view with the right language, but we can always have plain English alongside the legalese, can't we, Claire? Absolutely. So that's a good thing, and we'll take that away as we should have a review really of all literature. Does anyone want to jump in on this?
Yeah, if I can just add in, yeah, welcome the comments. The Section 20 process is obviously a legal process we have to follow. We have worked hard to make the descriptions a bit more detailed. It is hard when you're, especially with major works, if we're re-roofing various blocks of flats of different architectural types, you have to give a reserved detail that it could be this, but once you start works, it might be a lot smaller. We have to be conservative on the kind of costs that it may cost. Quite often it does come in less than that. What we had wanted to do, particularly with the leaseholder forum, is if we have any major works ahead of us, is to involve the forum with the notices that are going out, to actually run them past yourselves, so that you can give comment and raise observations with us before they go out. It is challenging, kind of from the resource that we have available to manage all this. We have 460 leaseholders scattered across the borough. We have multi-million pound contracts for windows, doors, roofs. So there is a lot going on. With regards to service charges, again, we try to make those as detailed as possible. Sometimes we do rely, when we send the annual service charge bill out, a customer leaseholder may contact us and say, I'm not sure this repair was carried out. We would then automatically go back and look at that. And if it wasn't charged, we would take that off the bill for that leaseholder and any others in the block as well. But the service charge bills, we have got more and more accurate. We have less issues that are raised after, so we have improved in that sense. But the Section 20 is not unique to us. It's across the country. There are very large works going on with substantive contributions from leaseholders. But yeah, welcome the comments, and I think we could do a lot more working with the forum, particularly if we know we've got these large projects coming up, to go through the notices in a bit more detail and try and make it a bit more personable. We do send out other supporting information on the Section 20 that you can contact one of my colleagues who'll be able to go through and answer any queries, but it'd be good to be a little bit more proactive with some kind of softer information going out as well.
Just to what I've been a leaseholder myself, so I've lots of experience of that. And what you're describing about service charges and understanding service charges and actually the worry about service charges, that you never know quite what's going to come and you don't feel in control of it, is something I've experienced myself. It happens all the time, which doesn't make it any better for the individuals. But I think you're right, the communication is, if we can get clear information to people as early as possible, and so people can budget for it and so on, and obviously, you know, be really clear about why it's costing so much. That sounds like really good practice. Yeah. I feel, yeah.
Yeah, because we have noted that obviously there's that observations opportunity within any Section 20 notice. But again, several of us in the last leaseholder meeting had actually made an observation about the cyclical decoration, because, as I mentioned, I think it does just come across as an incredibly large fee for what is not particularly good work. And none of us had heard back within, I think it's the 20 days or whatever at the point, or maybe it was very close to the 20 days. I think it was a bit of a timing issue as well with that meeting. But again, when I did finally get a response, it was pretty much oh dear, that's it. Like, so the observation process in itself isn't really feeling like it's providing much context. And I think that's the point that I was trying to make just around like accessible breakdowns, like, which would have made it more understandable. X isn't, you know, and it might be too early. In noting what you've said, you've got a wide range of properties. Some are going to be yay big, some are like, you know, smaller flats. So appreciate that, but perhaps maybe just like, at the moment, this is based on like some broad brush approximations. But when we get down to it, we're going to end up in a position where we can then sort of give you more information or how that cost will then be derived.
I know Claire would like to jump in, but really the importance of communication is coming through.
I just wanted to just jump in, Chair, if you don't mind, and just thank Lizzie for all that really, really valuable feedback. It's great. When we set the leaseholder panel up just over a year ago, we wasn't sure whether we'd get anybody to go on it. So it's great that there are people on it, and it's great that you're meeting and that we're able to really get this feed, because that's absolutely what it's about, is us being able to learn directly from leaseholders and for us to be able to adapt our services to a way that works for you. And I think the communication part is absolutely essential, and I've written lots of notes here about the things you've said, so definitely take them away. I just wanted to also say that we are in the process at the moment, we've just finished going through a process actually of having our recharge process audited. So we will have a formal audit as well from our internal auditors on the process around Section 20 notices and things like that. So I'm sure there'll be some recommendations that come. So it's an advisory piece of work that we wanted to get done ourselves. So I'm sure there'll be some recommendations that come from that that'll help on this journey as well. But so I just wanted to flag that that's happening as well.
Any other questions or observations? Thank you. Okay, so the next agenda item is the review of the Housing Committee forward plan. The forward plan was circulated with the agenda and it's taken as read. No decision is required, but you may comment on the forward plan or suggest future items the committee could consider. So any comments, amendments, any kind of topics that you really care about that you would like to go on the forward plan, which we're not
Very
covering?
busy agenda in November.
Yeah. Yeah, so, because genuinely, this is, if there's some, it's the point of this committee, if there's something that you're really bothered about, it can be scrutinised at this committee and go on the forward plan. Okay, I'll take that as, other than the points you've just raised, which no doubt we'll come back to, definitely. Okay, the next item is the items to be referred to Cabinet. Well, no items have been referred to Cabinet this time, definitely. The next point is item 13, which is the Housing Sector Insight Report. So the point of the report was to provide the committee with an overview of recent developments in the housing sector and provide opportunities for horizon scanning. The briefing note was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read, but please do comment if you have any comments. I have a comment. I was going to ask you about the remediation acceleration plan and what we think about that in the context of what we're doing here.
So the remediation acceleration plan we've signed up to.
Yeah.
We have 3 properties at the moment. You may remember, members, it was quite a few months ago now, we had an issue with which we identified through one of our fire assessments with regards to the cladding that was on those 3 11-metre blocks. And so we did some immediate works to ensure the safety of those buildings. There will now be a bigger piece of work around basically replacing the cladding on those 3 blocks, and they are part of the accelerated programme. We are hoping to get some funding from central government towards those works, because part of the remediation scheme includes an ability to bid for some funding, so we'll be putting that bid in. But we are signatories to the accelerated remediation plan we don't have any 18-metre blocks, so we don't have that worry, but we do have some 11-metre ones. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I think we've done this meeting very quickly. We're almost finished then. So the final item is item 14, which is the date of the next meeting, so date for your diary, Wednesday the 26th of November at 6 p.m. If there is no other business, I confirm that the meeting is now closed and that streaming